Yeah, I'll welcome you back, or welcome you to start making your way back, as I welcome Anushka to join us. And Anushka is a legal advocate, organizer, author, academic, coach, media and communications expert, teacher, and gardener. She's traveled extensively over the last decade, connecting with communities and advocating for equality, Indigenous sovereignty, and abundance. Anushka currently resides in Secwepemc Nation, where she plants and saves seeds alongside Secwepemc family and community members, and has also been involved in wild salmon and water defense actions over the last 7 years. In this discussion, Anushka will be talking about allyship, colonialism, solidarity, and sovereignty, and how difficult they are to imagine sometimes when we're living in a real everyday world with capitalism, patriarchal power relations, and Indigenous genocide. This session is a story in motion and is still unfolding. It welcomes personal considerations of Indigenous sovereignty and jurisdiction and the importance of being human. Thank you so much, Anushka.
Oh, good. There we go. Um, Thank you. Yeah, those were a lot of very nice words, and I put a lot of work into doing bios and trying to present myself in a way that is understandable. And so here we are, and here I am. I am sitting in a utility closet, so please don't mind the utility closet. We don't have the best internet on the reserve. We've just gotten our Wi-Fi on the reserve, and there's also a bunch of screaming dogs and cats and children around. So I came to the library, and they very nicely put me in the utility closet and gave me a chance to have some quiet space with you guys. So welcome to the next hour. I hope it's going to be useful and a space to relate in a very, very personal way to me, because I like new friends, but also to relate to some of the work that I've done and that has been done for a very long time on this territory. So my name is Anushka. My last name up here is Azadi. It's my chosen last name. It's what I use when I'm doing work like this. And for those that don't know, it just means freedom. And the reason why I decided to name this workshop Being Human, or this talk Being Human, is because I think that it's really necessary, to, once we do a lot of the heady talking about politics and social relations and economics and genocides and all the things that are happening that sound very big and often somewhat disconnected from who we are every day in our lives. I wanted to try and bring those things together, and consider, like, what does it mean to actually live a human's life. And I got the inspiration from an old, he's passed now, his name is John Trudell, and he was a member of the American Indian movement. And his family were actually targeted, and there was a fire, and his pregnant wife, 3 kids, passed in that fire. And through all of that pain and trauma, he is still put out a lot of text, songs, poetry, images, left for us to follow in the very prophetic writings that he wrote about. And they are very much, again, just based on what it means to be human. So I'm just going to read you a quote as we get started here from John Trudell, and maybe you'll understand better than I can explain in this moment why I call this workshop Being Human. So John Trudell says, "When Columbus got off the boat, he asked us who we were. We said we're the human beings. We're the people. Conceptually, the Europeans didn't understand that. It was beyond their conceptual reality. They didn't see us. They couldn't see who we were. Historically speaking, we went from being Indians to pagans to savages to hostiles to militants to activists to Native Americans. It's 500 years later, and they still can't see us. We are still invisible. They don't see us as human beings, but we've been saying to them all along, that's what we are. We are invisible to them because we are still the human beings. We are still the people, but they will never call us that. They taught us to call ourselves Indians. Now they're teaching us to call ourselves Native Americans. It's not who we are. We're the people. They can't see us as human beings, but they can't see themselves as human beings either. The invisibility is at every level. It's not just that we're tucked away out of sight. We're the evidence of the crime. They can't deal with the reality of who we are, because then they have to deal with the reality of what they have done. If they deal with the reality of who we are, they have to deal with the reality of who they aren't. I wonder if you guys can see me still.
Yeah, we can see you. Are you trying to share your screen? We can't see anything else. We can't share shared screen.
No, I just, my internet,
you.
it just said my internet connection. So I hope that.
Yes, we can see you. And Noor has asked just where we can find that quote.
Okay, yeah, I will put a link on the chat there. And it goes on, the quote does go on. So please feel free to access that. There we go. Okay, good. So I hope this is okay. Yeah, everybody's just frozen in my screen. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you and we can see you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so if you can't, I'm just going to pay attention to the chat. Just let me know if things are going wrong, because this is not the best internet connection in the utility closet. My name is Anushka. The reason why I'm doing this talk is because it's been a very personal journey for me to connect with the Secwepemc Nation, but also with the indigeneity and personhood in and of itself. And it started
It seems like we've lost Anushka. My guess is that she'll join back in. Perhaps in this time that we're waiting for her to come back, I know Jabala and Mesa have been taking some notes and some reflections to share back on how they've been experiencing the day so far. So perhaps we can give some time. Maybe just hold on 1 second. I think Anushka might be back.
Did it happen? Did it work?
You're back. Okay.
Okay, I'm back. Yeah. Okay. So I apologize. So anyway, really all I'm trying to do is share about myself and lead by example on what it means to actually honor Indigenous communities, relationships, and really what to simplify things, because when we talk about these things, we have a lot of words these days to use. We use words like settlers and colonialism and decolonization and relationships through academics and politics and economy, and they're all sort of divided up in the very same way Western thought sort of divides and disconnects things. So we consider our social relationships on one side, we consider our political relationships on another side, we consider economy as something separate as well. But I'm here to say that my relationships and my work has come from a need for personal healing, and that need for personal healing just led me back to the land. And when I got led back to the land, there are still people on the land, it turns out. The government is lying to you, the media is lying to you. They're all still out there, and everybody is still within their family structures, in governance structures, creating community, preserving land and water, and continuing to argue for personhood, for just what it means to be human. And so, John Trudell also says something like, well, I'm just a human being in a world that's rapidly losing its understanding of what it means to be human. And so my presentation today, I really want to nail it home, that it isn't, I'm not talking about Indigenous people, I'm not talking about Muslim people, I'm not talking about men, women, anything. I'm not talking about any of these identities that we have created for whatever reason we've created them. That's another conversation. But what I am talking about is this very, very simple, basic, distill it down to the understanding of, please, I need to be human to heal, and we all need to be human to heal, and to reconnect to the things that literally physically sustain us, and the things that literally and physically sustain us are the land that we walk and live on, the water that we drink, and the food that comes from that land, the energy that we cycle through in that process as well. This is all reduced down to the basics of survival. I'm not talking about politics, and I'm not talking about social relationships and structures or economy. I am talking about living, about having a life. And so, I came to Secwepemc territory 7-8 years ago now, maybe a little bit longer, almost like a baby, hey, like almost unable to, or had no knowledge on what it meant to like eat properly, how to speak respectfully, move in a respectful and gentle and kind way. I didn't know any of these things. But coming here, I realized that that knowledge still exists, and it exists in a very alive and constantly evolving space. And so it started when I was arrested in Vancouver. So I am always a radical person and had always been involved in protest and political work. And so in Vancouver, we had been doing rallies in solidarity with Montreal students who were protesting their tuition hikes. Now, that wasn't a very important issue to me, but the amount of energy that it was drumming up in people to just be out on the streets and bang around some pots and pans and take space was really very exciting. So I'd organized in solidarity with that, and then was arrested for almost no reason. Like, we hadn't even walked onto the streets that day. So after being arrested, put into jail, they cracked a couple of ribs of mine. I spent the whole summer laid up that year, not feeling very good, physically exhausted, emotionally and spiritually really hurt, and realized that the reason why that exhaustion, that pain, that all of that hurt happened is because I really wasn't standing on any kind of solid ground, doing these kinds of protests in the city, talking about Montreal students and this and that, without actually considering the land that the city is on, the amount of work that it took people, human beings, to steward and protect the great mystery that these lands and waters are. So I realized, hey, like, I was arrested, broken ribs, emotionally and spiritually broken for no reason, and with no standing in this world, no standing at all. And so I needed, again, that healing. The healing pattern is throughout my life that I've needed to seek out a way to heal from my physical disease, but also from the emotional and spiritual diseases that are floating around out here as well. And so when all of that happened, the police were continuing their harassment on me and my family and community in Vancouver. And so I needed to get out. And so how do you get out of the city? Well, I had built some good relationships with people from Houseit territory, a Houseit Nation, which is just off the tip of Tofino, Vancouver Island. You go about 45 minutes into the ocean. And they heard, what was happening to me, and they said, well, you were planning to visit anyway. Why don't you just pack your bags and head out here tomorrow? So I did. I packed my bags and I left Vancouver, and that was basically the last time I ever lived in Vancouver for an extended period of time, and there really began my journey into becoming human. And so becoming human became really, really important to me because, again, I needed to heal. I was in pain when I wasn't human. I was disconnected and hungry and angry, and I needed help. I needed to be taught what it meant to be human. So I was very, very grateful for my Howsit family for taking me in, and letting me spend time on the territory, eat the food that just is abundant anywhere you look. There's salmon berries, there's thimbleberries, blueberries, raspberries, there's roots, there's shoots, there's fish, there's all of this abundance. And it's all of this abundance that we have been taught not to feel. Our perception of reality has been altered, and so now we understand, we understand the world as existing in a state of scarcity, or existing in a state of economy where it's always this give and take, where you sell your body or your energy or your spirituality or your emotions or whatever it is, to then gain some, you want some food, or you want a place to live or whatever, and you feel like you have to trade in this way things that were never meant to be traded. So when I started living with my Howsit family, I also started making connections in other communities, and I'd already again made some connections in Secwepemc territory as well. And then in 2014, the Mount Polly disaster happened in Secwepemc territory, where there was a big mine tailings pond that spilled into the waterways and into the second deepest fjord lake, glacier-fed lake in the world. And the whole Secwepemc Nation was really again hurt. And we were all struggling to figure out, well, what do we do, and how do we, in a state of governance and empowerment, where we hold power, not authority. They have authority, and their authority is fear, but the nation has power, and that power is based on the literal physical land and life that springs forth from it, us. So in the context of power, how do we actually come forward and address this in a way that is the Secwepemc way, the human way to address a disaster like this? And it's quite the disaster. This was during the peak salmon runs that happen every 4 years. So we had a peak salmon run that year, and that mining waste tore up a creek that was maybe 6 feet wide into, I don't know, let's say 500 foot, I don't even know. It was a very, very large gash in the earth full of tailings waste, where the salmon usually run. And so through that heartbreak that occurred, we decided that there was going to be a sacred fire lit at the mining entrance, and we were going to gather the community and find out what happened, how it happened, and how we could prevent things like this from happening in the future, and protect the salmon that we need to survive out here. So that was my first time attending a sacred fire. And again, I found another whole world of healing and humanity in sitting by that sacred fire with the hereditary chief from this area, Sauces, and his family, and learning again what it means to be in community, especially in the midst of a lot of pain and trauma that is repeated over and over again. And we gathered the community, we talked to people in the area, we questioned all of the trucks coming in and out for a period of time. We shared space with hunters that use that road to travel, and we talked about the salmon, and we made plans and connections and community. And then the fire was over, and we went back home. And so that cycle of sacred fires, community, food, continued into my time in Secwepemc territory, and I began to understand the way that many of our cultures do understand everyone as brother and sister. We talk about that in Muslim spirituality as well. We call each other brother and sister, but I mean it. Like, I mean brother and sister. I mean that every person that I had been close to at that sacred fire, all those people that came, they all started to become family to me, and very, very important to how I lived my life. And again, the whole point is the healing that was necessary for each of us. So I have a physical disease, but other people have mental health issues. Other people have spiritual health issues. Other people deal with so many other things. But we can all agree that as a whole, this society, this social relating, this community, everything that we do is in deep, deep need of healing, because it's still creating so much trauma and pain everywhere we go. Every dollar that we buy, spend, earn with, that's all blood money. That's all money that's been used and exchanged in the tradition of genocide and displacement and trauma. And these things keep coming up so that we can learn about them. This summer, there's 215 children, a mass grave found here in Secwepemc territory, which, while it's not necessarily a surprise that elders have been telling us that this was happening for a long time, it's a re-triggering and a bringing up again of what has happened, and the need, the utter and dire need to confront it, to deal with it, and to heal these wounds that once we do heal them, we have access to such great abundance, to very good health, to free and clear and happy community, family relationships. All of these things that we're struggling with already, we have access to food that's actually good for you instead of just filling a space within you. We have access to clean water instead of water that's treated in treatment plants and laden with chemicals and other things that aren't making us feel so good. And so my story is important only because it tells, I hope that it tells you that the movement, the work that we are doing every day, as activists, as academics, as whatever identity we've chosen for the moment, all has to come back to being a good human being, to being a healthy human being, not even a good human being, a healthy human being. And so we have to think about how we want our lives to be. So, outside and leaving behind the structures of colonialism, leaving behind the structures of patriarchy. And I just mean, and when I mean colonialism and patriarchy, I'm talking about leaving the structures of career, jobs, cities, schools, doctors, police, like all of these structures that have been created, leaving all of that behind and closing our eyes and really, really thinking and dreaming about what we want our lives to actually look like. So, like not thinking about like, well, I want a nice house in the city and I want to be safe in the city, or I want a good job to take care of my children. Okay, but leaving those structures behind on the land and with the water and as a human animal, what do we want our lives to actually look like? Well, we want health, and we do want some safety and security. We want connection, we want healing, and we want love. And these are universal across all cultures, across all identities of that are layered over being human. These are across all kinds of ways in which we have related to each other and the land and the water already. And they have to be that way. They have to be outside of the colonial mindset. And again, like, these are tough words for me to use because I spend a lot of time just, with people doing people things, which is like gardening and checking out territorial spaces in the area. How is that water doing over there? How come the Chase Creek has dried up? They've got that pipeline work going over there. Let's go check it out and make sure that they're not going to hurt any of the area around it and hurt us in the process. Recognizing that the water outside of us is the water inside of us as well. So there's a very thin barrier, that's our skin, that separates us from everything else, but it's also very porous. And we are deeply, deeply connected to the world around us. And in order to survive, we have to stay connected to the world around us. And all of these structures like I said, police, school, health, religion, even. All of these structures have taken our ability to connect directly with the natural world, with the world around us, and have created sort of middlemen, men usually too, middlemen, to allow us to consider ourselves in this world. But we don't need those middlemen. We don't need the men at all. I'm just kidding. But you know, what we do need is a way to be human, to be ourselves. There is something very, very sacred in who each one of us are, in the skills that we are given, in the gifts that we were born with, and realizing now what they are, to make this world a good, safe, abundant place. And even the idea of safety is such a colonial concept. It's so hard to talk in English sometimes and get these things across to you, but I hope they are getting across. I've been now, you know, within Secwepemc Nation, you know, traveling through, but always, you know, coming back to here for maybe like the last 7, 8, 9 years. And I am so grateful for the space that has been granted to me here, and for the amount of love and knowledge and food and seeds and water and, you know, creatures that are here. They're when you're in the city, you lose sometimes track of the world around you. You know, the city blocks out the natural sky with the light, so you don't even see the stars. It's polluted. A lot of the natural elements of the world are disguised, and you are sort of you become a unit of production, a unit of measurement for the powers that be, for this very small group of people. You become like, you know, if you think about the Matrix, you become like a battery for that very big machine that you get no benefit from, that nothing gets any benefit from, and that only benefits this very, very small group of people. I don't even know who they are. Maybe I do, but so you know, being able to move from all of these systems and structures that are built to package and sell you, to become reconnected into the real world instead of the world that has been created, is a pathway of healing, is a pathway that leads you back to the land and water, and is a pathway that inevitably leads you back to Indigenous people who are still protecting the land and water, and still protecting that knowledge of what it means to be human. Personally, my own health had deteriorated to such a point where there was a year or two where I couldn't even eat very much food at all. I was having to consume mostly liquids. I had holes in my stomach. I had very little energy, but still did all the things that I wanted to do. But I did them in a like, it was very, very hard work to get through living in such a poorly way. And you know, sometimes I would talk to people here. I would talk to my sister Miranda here, and I would tell Miranda, I said, you know, like, I really believe in everything you're doing. I believe in it so much, I would even die for it. And Miranda said, okay, but now live for it, and find out what the difference is, and what does it actually mean to live for it. And that made so much sense to me, and continues to unfold in how I'm learning how that makes sense to me. But in our Western mindsets of you know, even academics and culture and things like that, we really prioritize like the mind and the brain, and we've sort of taken it separate and put it on a pedestal, and forgotten almost about everything else, and everything else is still there and still needs to function, and when we do, you know, reach into our heart or our spirit or our physical health, or the things that we want out of this world, all of it's still there and exists, and all of it is still possible. And where a Western world will prioritize sort of this objective idea of knowledge, this very like stationary, you know, we know one thing, and we will always know that one thing. Indigenous knowledge is adaptive, and subjective. It readily acknowledges the person holding the knowledge, the the way in which it's applied, and the fact that it changes like the seasons do. And Indigenous law is nothing more than like the law of the mountains, or the law of the river, or the law of the seasons. It's not like colonial law that was sort of created out of nothing and out of a need for control. It's Indigenous law that's rooted, physically rooted, in the world, in us as sort of pieces of the world as well. Like we're made up of the same elements as our dirt that we're walking on, as the water we drink. We're all the same thing. And it's some blessing that we've been given this consciousness, this idea to speak to each other, to share ideas. And at some point that was harnessed and used against us, and used to control us instead of allow us the freedom to be human. And so I really, really would like, for everyone to be human, and to be allowed that, and to take that space, not even to be allowed the space to be human, but to take that space, and to take it every day in every action that you take, and ask yourself, when you're doing anything in this world, anything at all, making breakfast, walking down the street, doing whatever, ask yourself, does this support life? Does this support life, or does this support death? Does this support knowledge that is adaptive and compassionate and for your health and well-being, or does this support death, knowledge that is objective, meant to control and meant to take you away from living? They've changed it on us. They call work making a living, and they've really taken almost everything away from who we are as human beings, and this, it's all still there. It's all still in the forest. It's all still at the lake. It's still at the mountain. It's still in the garden. All of those lessons, it's still with the people, and our ability to access that is our ability to evolve. And so when we think about relationships with Indigenous people and all these things, it's just relationships with human beings. That's all we're thinking about. What does it mean to have good relations with each other? What does it mean to have good relations with the four-legged, the bugs, the birds, the everything? What does it mean to have good relations with the water? What does it mean to have good relations with the mountain, with the seasons? I was asked, recently, like, okay, well, like, how do you eat even? Like, and this is something I'm learning about too, is like, how do you eat? Well, you eat with the seasons. This is something in Ayurvedic medicine as well, that you eat seasonally. And so what grows and comes out of the ground during those seasons is what you should be eating, and is what's best for your health. And then what you can preserve for the wintertime, like squash and lentils and things like that, that's for your winter stores. And so being human is a much more accessible and simple way to regard the world than anything else that I've ever heard. And so I don't want everybody to go out and try to be Indigenous, or try to be Secwepemc or Statlium or Musqueam, or like, every nation has its own protocols, its own territory, its own way of doing things. But being human is something we can all do. Being human is something that is required of us if we want this world to be a good place for our own selves, to be a healthy place for our own selves, but for our children and for the generations that are coming afterwards. And it's all there. Nothing is lost. Nothing is lost. Everything is still there. And what they try to tell you in the city and in the news and in the politics is all like this layer of grime, this layer of chemical leftovers on top of what is still a beautiful, pristine, life-supporting world. It is still there, and she is still our mother. And you love your mother. You love your mother. Water is your first environment. You spend 9 months inside your mother in that water to prepare yourself to come out here. And so much of what we understand, of what I've understood about living as a human being, has also come through ceremony and practices that aren't rules, or you're bad and you're good, or go sit in the corner, or go to jail, or anything like that. It's none of that. It's okay, well, you could choose to be this way, or you could choose to be happy, or you could choose to be this way, or you could choose to be healthy. And I really, really encourage all of you to take time to actually think about, again, free from all of these structures that we have created, free from everything in your own mind, as wild as your imagination can get. What do you want your life to look like? How do you want to feel every day? Who and what is important to you in this world? And go get it. Go get it, and know that there are so many ways to get there. There, you know, the way I do things isn't the way someone else is going to be able to do things. I don't do things in the best, perfect way possible. I screw up a lot, and I'm still learning all the time. And all of that anger and that fear and that sadness that we feel is in relation to us wanting to be human. We want it so bad. We want that healing. We want to be able to be comfortable in this world. And instead of, you know, in the Western way of we prioritize safety, security, and comfort in this very colonial way. Instead of doing that, we prioritize our work, the work that it takes to live. So we prioritize working for our food, working to take care of the land around us, and the all of the relatives on that land, the bugs and the birds and the bees and everything, and we create our world over and over again, and we reify what it means to be alive, instead of what it means to be dead and dead and dead again. And so the work of being human is the work of healing, is the work of returning to nature, to our environment. And you know, these are all such weird ways of saying, is the work of returning. The work of human is the work of returning, is the work of connection, is the work of love, is the work of family. And when you are able to actually freely exist, you know, be comfortable in any weather, seek out the water when you need help, walk the forest when your mind is too full of thoughts, listen to the singing of the birds and the bees when you're feeling depressed. Like, all of that healing comes from that connection to the world around you. And all of my healing, all of the work that I've had to do and still have to do over the next years of my life, maybe this will be my whole life, is seeking out and receiving that medicine, that healing, that love. And it has to be, there's no option but to have it, to be at some point relating to alongside Indigenous nations, because again, that's where the majority of that knowledge is still being protected and secured safely for when the rest of us are ready to become human again. It's all there. And there are lots of ways to get there. There are many reasons why you should do that. And everybody will have their own reasons why they would want to return to being human, but everyone will have a reason to do it. So I don't know. I've said a lot of things, and I'm very, very excited, you know, to be hosting this talk. This is the first time I've sort of tried to conceptualize this idea I have in my mind that I want to talk to everybody about around being human, and how if you just think about being human first, just being human first, supporting life and loving life first, and everything that we do comes after that. All of our religiosity, our academics, our work in this world comes after that. And that knowledge of being human is in the land, in the water, and in the people who are still human as well. And those are these people who are still protecting the lands and waters, that are still connected to their territories, that still have language and culture, and are seeking it out as well, you know. It's too easy to stay stuck in a 9-to-5 city, September to April mindset, whatever the school year is. It's very easy to become that. That's why they've created them that way, because we mistake them for what it means to be human, instead of just doing what we have to do. Okay, that's all I'm going to say right now. Maybe I'll open it up to some questions. Or if you want me to keep talking, I could keep talking about some things. I don't know. But I hope that's helpful. And I do welcome any kind of question at all. And I will also be leaving my contact information with Aslam to give out to everybody, for anybody that wants to talk some more, because I'm also happy to talk and figure this out with everybody. This is still, like I said, a story in motion. It's still happening. So I'm still figuring all these things out and trying to understand, as are many of us. So.
Thank you so much. I think just a moment of pause to appreciate the energy and the ideas that you bring. And I think like your passion for life, it's so off. It's like a trivial phrase often used, like, oh, this person's got a passion for life. But I think this passion for being human, and I think someone made reference to it in one of the earlier sessions, this idea of like returning to our fitra, like returning to the way that we were created and how we were created to be, not even stewards, but like I think in good relationship with land, with each other, and I think you're just like pointing out how far we are from that. I think this is the second time I've been in conversation with you in a session like this, and I get it really deeply discomforts me. It feels so radical and so outside of how I can conceive of my life and expectations and things like that. But I appreciate the fact that, you know, we all exist on the spectrum of belonging and belief and ideas and how we move through the world, and just to be able to witness and experience how you're choosing to live your life, I think is a huge blessing for what's possible.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
And yeah, I think there is a question from Amina in the chat box.
Do you feel like you had to sacrifice the vices of everyday colonial influence society for a more connected human way of life? That's a great question. I'm so glad someone asked that. I sacrificed everything because everything was already being taken from me. So you know, I was born sick, and I remained sick all of my life. And maybe that's not the right way to phrase it in terms of energetically. I want to say it in a different way. But anyway, I was diagnosed with a chronic illness, and so already it felt like things were being taken from me. But you know, I continued on. I went to law school. I graduated from law school. I tried to get an articling position. I did all these things to try and live a life. But I wasn't getting anywhere, and I was getting sicker and sicker, and more things were being taken from me emotionally and spiritually. They're just taking, you know, everything was being taken. So I gave everything up. A house in the city, or like, you know, apartment in the city, the amount of money I could have made with my degree, apparent money that I could have made with my degree. I gave up relationships with people. So you know, I became myself, an individual. I gave up everything. I was a crazy, you know, like in my 20s, I was a crazy person. You know, I was really seeking out life. I really wanted to know what it meant to live. And so I did a lot of drugs and went to a lot of parties and had a lot of, you know, stuff happen. And I did all these crazy things, and nothing was satisfying. Nothing was life. Everything still felt like it was being taken away from me. So I let it all go then. I said, you know what, you could have it. And I'm going, and I'm going to go to the ocean, and I'm going to go to the mountain, and I'm going to go to the river. And when I did that, when I gave all that up, all of that life up, queer dance parties, you know, all kinds of things. I gave it all up, and I went to the land, and I said, hey, I need help. I really, really need help. I'm going to die like this, and I don't want to, and I want to experience living before I die. And so the land responded, the water responded, and the people in turn responded as well. And so I gave a lot up, money, boyfriends and girlfriends, dance parties, alcohol, drugs, everything. But it didn't feel like a big sacrifice for what I got in return. It didn't feel like anything at all. And you know, they say spiritually often you're doing an exchange, hey, you're trading one thing for another. And so I traded that, which I didn't feel like was very much, for a lot in return, for my own self. So yes, I did sacrifice, and it was totally worth it.
I've got a question. I'm curious if you're willing to comment on it briefly. I think in the chat box there was this discussion about the mosque and the land, right? And I think
Right.
that it speaks a little bit to the way that Islam has been colonized, right? The way that
Yes.
the way we think about our faith, and there's decolonial Islamic studies and decolonial Islamic schools that happen all over the world, and this
Yeah.
process of trying to unpack what is like the essence of the faith, like the revelation, the guidance towards good relationship, versus the way it's been productized and monetized, and power has come into it, and egos and other things.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
as someone who's like grown up within the Muslim tradition, you've got that ability to kind of speak to these different worlds that I'd love to hear about.
Yeah. So I did grow up in a Muslim family within the spiritual aspect of it as well, and went to mosque. And there's a lot of, different things that there's a lot of rhythm in being Muslim, or following any kind of religion. There's certain days of the week that are special days. There's certain days of the month that are special days. And despite, so, okay, look, I am still questioning what it means to be Muslim, because I often find that religion was meant to replace spirituality. So there's like this really tension I feel between religion and spirituality that I still don't know how to sort of bring together. Because yes, there's still conversations about like rules and a mosque as being like a physical space where we worship, and that being the only place that you worship, which is ridiculous, because the mosque, first of all, is physically made of the dirt around you. And then if you're physically worshiping within a house of dirt, then it's very easy to step outside and continue that worship in every single thing that you do. But because of the way religions themselves, not even just the Muslim religion, but just religions in itself, how they've been relegated in our society, like we as if prayer and ceremony is a separate thing from the way we live our lives, as if the mosque is a separate thing from the mountain, which it is not, as if we are a separate thing from the water. And so I think it's really, really important that as much as we can, we break down all of the borders and boundaries that are keeping us tied to ways that don't suit everybody. These are not, like, the mosque isn't a place where everybody can go to, even Muslims, like even within the Muslim religion, I don't always feel good to be in the mosque. I don't always feel good to be around male imams that are talking about the way I should live without talking to me and finding out what it means for me to live, or having any context of me in my life. And so I have a lot of struggle in understanding sort of like how I grew up and how I am conceiving of the world now. And that's why these kinds of conversations with other Muslim people are very important to me, because I'm not trying to talk at you and tell you that this is the way it is. Rather, I'd like to at some point start to actually have conversations that we can talk back and forth and have meetings and understand how to merge all of these things that need to be merged in all of us to be able to live a connected life. And so the mosque is not separate from the mountain, and in a lot of in the old ways of spirituality and religion or prayers, like you could take a rock out of the river and pray to that rock, because that rock is a piece of creation. That rock has the same elements as you do, as everything around you. And if you sat your whole life and prayed to that rock, that's the same thing as praying in a mosque or praying to a spiritual creator or whatever it is. And so the thing that I really want to get across is we all need healing. Every single person needs healing in one way or another. How do we receive that healing is something that was talked to me about in a ceremony recently. How do we get that healing? Well, we return to the earth. We almost become a part of it again to reestablish ourselves. So we go back to the water, we go to the mountain, we go to the clay, we go to the river, and we become again. And so I really want to encourage people to find ways in doing that outside of structure. Religion can still be there, being Muslim can still be there, but try being human first. And then understand being human as also being Muslim, as also being a student and a whatever else you are, whatever your identity is. Does that make sense?
Thank you so much. Wati's got a question.
Thank you, Anushka. This, been really very helpful learning about your struggles and how you've managed.
Sorry, Wati, your sound is like really soft. Is there a way that you could speak up or move closer to a microphone or something like that?
Now, I'm using my phone.
Oh,
Is this better now?
a little bit better, but still very quiet.
Okay, let me try and fix this. Yeah. So I'm sorry about that.
That's
Maybe
okay.
this is better? Yeah, this is better. Okay. No, I just, I love hearing what you talk about, and I'm just thinking about, about people like me, about the regular women who who are struggling in this systemic patriarchy and oppression, and and do you see what you're doing as, is it, do you see that in terms of not being an ideal, but actually, can it be actually a privilege to actually be doing that? Do you see? I'm just trying to frame it in a way that where to escape from this life, people living day to day, trying to find the next meal, um, and having that breakaway, and to just leave everything. How do you see that? Like isn't that, it's not the ideal, but it's actually, can it be framed as a privilege? I'm just trying to I'm just thinking how this kind of
Yes. Great question. So for those that didn't hear it, maybe I'll try to say something about the question and then say something else. But so yeah, like for those people, for all of the people who are struggling day to day, trying to survive, do you feel like what you're doing is sort of like a privilege, or how do you frame what you're doing, et cetera, et cetera? So is that, yeah, okay. So I am grateful that in my life, I have sought out and been afforded many spiritual and physical opportunities to be free. So in the pursuit of being free, like I said before, I've left a lot of things. I've left everything and everyone at certain points of my life. And then I've returned, and, I wouldn't really, I'm not sure what a privilege would be, but I would frame it as I couldn't do anything else other than what I'm doing right now. If I did try to do other things, I would be very, very sick, very, very unhappy, and maybe not even alive today if I hadn't pursued this path. It's been literally life-giving to me to do this work. If I didn't have it, I don't know what would have happened to me, to my family, and so on. And there is this everyday grind. So I acknowledge that because we are not indigenous to these territories, there is a sense of insecurity and unsafety that we are constantly subject to on the part of the government, healthcare, even school, whatever these structures that have been created. They are not for us either. And so there is a sense of constant unsafety, instability, disconnection, and fear that we are filled with. And what I did in my life to pursue this path of healing, everybody cannot do, but doesn't mean that everybody can't do it do something in their own way to break out of that. That 9 to 5, that struggle for the next meal. It is terrible. It is terrible that any human being, that any animal, that any living thing should ever have to struggle the way we struggle to survive in this world. That is unacceptable. And we must acknowledge first that is unacceptable, so that we can change and deal with it. Because for so long, many of us, and me too, for so long, just tried to survive within the structures they created for us. I went to school. I went to law school. I got $60,000 in debt. I had an apartment in Victoria. I did all these things. But it was very, very hard to maintain any of those things. And I was constantly at someone else's mercy, which I never appreciated. And which hurt me deeply every day. And just like Indigenous people talk about genocide. Everybody should talk about genocide, but Indigenous people specifically talk about genocide. The reason why so much talk about genocide is because it's literally every day in everything that we do. Genocide is there. In the way we buy food, in the way that we sell things, buy things. Every dollar that we make, use, is blood money for the genocide that's been done on these territories to create the notion of Canada. So it, for you know, even for me, it's still an aspirational goal. I haven't gotten there yet. You know, I still struggle financially sometimes. I struggle with my health. Emotionally, I have problems and need to deal with them. And it's a constant process of making yourself free. You have the ability to do that. Doesn't matter what anybody told you, where you live, how they say to live it, how much money it takes to rent out that apartment. Being human changes everything. And so when I was out here, for example, in Secwepemc territory, sometimes I don't have a lot of money. I have very, very little money, but I have very, very good relations and loving relations with people around here. And so, you know, there's a house next door to us, and my friend lives next door, and he's a mechanic. And so even when I don't have money, I bought a van for $400 that didn't work. Everything worked, but the brakes were shot. And so I had a $400 van that I could afford. It didn't work. And so because I had a good relationship with my friend, he helped me fix it in exchange for the food that I'm growing. All that money was made to do was to replace the relationships that you have with people around you or the world around you. It's meant to replace all those relationships with dollar signs and disconnect you from each other and disconnect you from the physical world. Once you start nurturing connection, however you can, however it makes sense to you, just start in any way, shape, or form with anything and everything around you. You nurture connection, and you watch how things start changing for you in your life, how you give and receive things, how there's a nice cycle and exchange of energy. People have a lot more things, you know, like I don't have a lot of dependents. I don't have children. My family is in Alberta and is very like persistent in taking care of themselves, and we don't need your help. So fine, my family's in Alberta, and that's good for me. So my family's in Alberta. I don't have a place to live per se. I either live here in Secwepemc territory with my family doing the garden in spring, summer, fall, or I live with my family in Alberta in the wintertime doing the healing work that I need to do. So like I said, I've given up a lot to be able to be human. And I think it's possible, even when you do have dependents and families and a place in Vancouver that needs rent paid, there are ways to create connections and community, and a need to seek out compassion and kindness for each other that will change everything. And so everybody is literally your brother and sister. Everything is your relative. Every single thing you touch, your table, the computer, everything is made out of natural elements. This is all derived from the world around us. There is nothing that is not of this world. Everything is. And so it's so important to be able to see things like that, to peel away this very adverse reality, this very like painful, traumatic reality we live, to peel it away and actually look at what the world actually is, who we actually are, and live every second of every life in that way. Otherwise, you'll be living every second of your life in the way they want you to, and that's in the context of genocide and patriarchy and racism and phobias galore and all these kinds of things, right? Take all that away, nurture your individual perspective, yours. Only you could think like that. Nobody else could. Nurture that, connect that with other people, and encourage other people to do the same. Change the world, you know, like that way. You the world is so big. You change it by each little connection that you continue to make, all of that energy that you expand out into this world.
Thank you, Anushka. I think we're gonna close the session with those words and my gratitude for you and everything that you were willing to share with us, and obviously everyone who shared with you. So that chain of gratitude goes far back, as far as I can even imagine. We're just